the picks from the guys on the back row, and then we'll get to more games and trash. The pants. By the way, interesting story before I tell you about the pants store at ESPN.com. I'm just getting bits and pieces of it, Brown. I'm seeing the headline. Apparently, they talked to coaches about favorite food.
Oh, boy.
Deion Sanders likes his steaks well done.
I mean, look.
If the headline is correct.
Look, this is also a guy that asked for literally Heinz 57 in a steakhouse in Atlanta.
I always say the best way to cook a steak is the way you like it.
That's right.
That's the best way to cook a steak. To me, well done has a zero flavor. You cook all the juice out of it, but that's the way you like it. That's the best way to cook a steak.
Personal liberties, right?
That's right. Personal
well
liberties.
done steaks.
Going back to yesterday.
Our friends at the Pants Store really enjoy the opportunity to help you for the holidays coming up. You can jump in and get great team wear. Alabama and Auburn for the men and women in your life, the young men, young women, old men, old women, kids. They got it all. Pants Store, pantstore.com. Great locations as well, from Huntsville to Auburn, Tuscaloosa, all over Birmingham. And you can order online, pantstore.com. Bama and Auburn polos and hats and quarter zips and a lot more. Famous name brands like Horn Legend, Cutter and Buck, Antigua and Gentile. Nothing says War Eagle or Roll Tide like the Pants Store. Those fall boots for the ladies. They've got the dresses, the rompers, the platforms, the sneakers, the clear purses that'll get you through security on game day, both football and basketball season. And the free alterations and the free gift wrapping. Pantstore.com, pantstore.com. Before we get back to the games, the standings we showed you earlier, so let's just get right to the picks before we get entertained and being able to see Forrester's AI budget of $19.99 a month.
It's one of my favorite things we do each week.
Let's get Brooks's pick first. Brooks, he's better at this than he is the upset alert. He is moving up the standings. Brooks, how you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm actually moving up the upset alert standings and down these standings. So
technically, until you move out of last place, you don't move up. You're just closer.
Well, I was in second outright a few weeks ago. I've had a couple of bad weeks in a row on this. So
I'm talking about upset alert.
Oh, gotcha.
You said you were moving up the upset alert. You're closer to moving out of the last place slot.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, this week I'm going to go with 2 Power 4 games and then kind of one off the beaten path. I'm going to take the Washington Huskies -3.5 versus Illinois. I like that game at home for them.
Okay.
I'm going to go Southern Miss -12.5 at home versus ULM. ULM is 131st in scoring offense and are dead last in the Sun Belt in scoring offense. Southern Miss is at home.
Good for you on that game is I think I sort of like ULM, so I'm pretty bad. I was 8-20 in my office pool last week against the spread. 28 games, 8-20, dead last out of 198 players.
Oh wow! Yeah, Southern Miss unbeaten in conference play, looking to move to 4-0 in the Sun Belt. And I like Baylor +4.5. Cincinnati ranked 96th nationally in pass defense. Baylor first in the nation in pass offense. So I like them on the road as a 4.5 point
track
dog.
meet.
I like that pick.
Can I just dovetail off something Brooks just said? We probably haven't talked enough about the job Charles Huff has done year one at Southern Miss. Now, it's Marshall South. He brought half his roster with him, but to Brooks's point, they were awful. They were awful. That guy's turned that program around fairly quickly.
Yeah, 100% in contention there. That gets us to Forrester, who leads the way in our pick 3, and he entertains us, as he always does, with a little help from artificial intelligence.
All right, so the line in all 3 of my games is 2.5.
This is your 2.5 point play of the year.
That's right. All right, Vandy, Mizzou.
Is that Broadway?
Who's
I like Vandy -2.5. Texas A&M, LSU. I like LSU plus the 2.5. And then Auburn, Arkansas. Give me the Hogs -2.5.
Oh, who's he giving 5 to?
That's Diego's mom.
Oh, that's mom.
Oh.
That's Miss
or
Pavia?
at least somebody who looks a lot like Diego's mom.
That was
Brian Kelly stomping grapes.
Yeah, can I believe you freezing smoke?
Check that oil.
In the neck brace.
Burning a little rich out of that.
Yeah, Theo Vaughn.
Theo Vaughn.
Get you somebody that looks at you like Theo Vaughn looks at Diego. Yeah.
Definitely looking at Diego's mom.
God, I love your AI, Scott.
Thanks.
That's the best. That one, Billy Napier, Raising for the Dead, and Trent Dilfer.
All right, let's roll now with Monday morning Morning Live with the ESPN's Tom Luginbill. I'm just Jim Dunaway. We are approaching week number 10 of the college football season, and we will get to Brian Kelly being fired. I think I saw Brandon Marcello, who says we now have $169.9 million in buyouts, and it's not even trick or treat yet, Luginbill. What the heck are we doing out there?
Expectations, man. Expectations, Jim. I've been giving this a lot of thought too with how we got to this point. And I think, to be honest with you, and credit some of these programs I'm going to mention, but because of the transactional nature of the sport and the fact that, maybe now more than ever, you can wave a magic wand and you can, go from being really poor to really good really quickly. I think it's added so much pressure to the quote unquote more higher profile programs like an LSU or Florida, what have you, when the presidents and the ADs and the board of trustees and all those people are looking over and they're looking at Indiana and they're looking at Vanderbilt and they're looking at Georgia Tech and going, how are we in the position that we're in right now? If those guys can get this done, what's happening here with us not meeting our standard or our expectation is unacceptable. And they're so hungry to not lose any type of gap or create any bigger gap there because they feel like they've got the resources to be who everybody's expecting them to be. And then it starts to add more pressure when you see the teams that's quote unquote not supposed to be there. I think that's very real.
Yeah, I do too. We'll get to Brian Kelly. I'm not saying I over-prepare for our show, but bigger sheet today than usual. I ordered the wrong size sheet from Amazon, so we're going with extra large sheet today to talk about the games on the field first, brought to you by our friends at Roback.com. Roback.com. Promo code TNR20 gets you 20% off right there with great gear, Roback.com. All right, Lugs, let's go Bama, South Carolina first. Alabama wins it on the road. Here's my first big takeaway from this one. Alabama, under Kalen DeBoer last year, lost this game. Alabama many times throughout history, a lot of teams get behind, you're in a late hole, you're down 8 with just barely over 2 minutes to go, and then you come back and win the game in regulation. There's something to say, especially now in this SEC, about just winning, baby.
I'm telling you, man, and it's hard. And that environment, Jim, was about as electrifying as I have seen most recently, particularly in the SEC, against a team that had absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain, and a team coming in there that's riding that streak, huge bullseye on their back, wasn't always pretty, but this is a gritty, resilient, hungry group of athletes that has been very well coached. I think they have also been very well prepared. Things didn't go the way they wrote them up. They didn't necessarily go the way it was planned. They had to find other ways. And good football teams, great football teams, do, I think, a couple of things. They don't worry about the scoreboard, and they don't dwell on the previous play. This team reflects that so well, in my opinion. And I just think as we go down the stretch of the season, and I've said this to you before, and you just look at the one possession game or the 10-point game or the one possession game late in the fourth quarter that we're seeing dominate college football each and every week. It's hard to win one possession games. Yeah. And when you do, you're having one of those special seasons, and that might be where Alabama's sitting right now, Jim.
Landmine Believer 174. The O-line cannot block a D-line with speed. The O-line had Ty seeing ghosts. It was Ty Simpson's least efficient. He was not as accurate as he usually is, though he was there when you needed him late. But I will tell you, I went back and watched it again yesterday. Brian Thomas, who's elite, had that one sack, and Dylan Stewart, who is potentially a first-round draft pick, had one tackle for loss. They only had 2 sacks and 6 TFLs the whole game. But they did hurry Ty up a lot. But those 2 star guys didn't do a ton on the stat sheet. Talk to me talk to me about that and how they did hurry Ty up, and maybe that was part of the inaccuracy.
Well, I think there's no question when you hear coaches talk about, forget sacks for a moment, do we affect the quarterback?
Right.
Right? Can we get him off platform, off schedule, maybe force him to hold it just a beat? And that's what's been so good about Ty Simpson, right? It's been so hard to rush him because the ball is out so quickly. I didn't think Alabama played overly well on the offensive line, and I did think they played pretty well the last 4 weeks. But I sent you a text on the weekend. I'm like, man, are you watching this trench play in the league? I mean, it was intense, man. Like Alabama didn't win all of their one-on-one matchups. And you're right. It didn't necessarily result in a sack or a negative play, but it resulted in incomplete passes, which changed your line to gain, where Alabama's usually been able to stay ahead of the chains and kind of control that tempo, but weren't necessarily able to do that with as much ease because they struggled to hold up in their one-on-one blocks. I looked at Oklahoma and Ole Miss. It was the exact same thing. All right, you look at LSU and Texas A&M. I mean, these guys are so good up front right now. And these offensive lines, and some of them are young and some of them are inexperienced. South Carolina certainly is. You got a bunch of freshmen there, right? LSU certainly is. You've got a bunch of freshmen, right? Oklahoma is struggling in that area just a little bit. So it's a weekly thing. I don't think this is all that exclusive to just Alabama. I think it's who you get matched up against. Do you have a bad day on that day? Do you miss some assignments? Because it's not always going to just be getting beat one-on-one. There's going to be mental errors. There's going to be technique errors. There are going to be things of that nature that lead to inefficiency. And we saw some of that with Alabama.
Yeah, and still getting behind the sticks. And I agree with you. They were not as great on first down as they usually are. They were still
right.
They were still 8 of 16 on third down, 2 of 3 on fourth down. So still very, very efficient from Ty Simpson leading that offense. 24 of 43, 253, 2 touchdowns, no interception. I want to talk to you about the Alabama run game or the lack thereof. I took away Bernard and Ty because Ty's numbers can skew you a little bit with sacks, though there was not a ton of those. Traditional run, 13 carries for 36 yards, Jam 10 of 26, and Daniel Hill 3 of 10. But he had an 11-yard run. He was 3 of 10.
Yeah.
So I'm at that point now where I'm like, okay, they're just not going to be able to traditionally run the football. But Ryan Grubb's offense, Ty Simpson, they're gonna pass it to the edges, and that's going to be the run game. Can Alabama survive with the way their run game is right now moving forward? Still handing it off to Jam and company, still getting occasionally 2 or 3 yards on first down, but when it comes to traditionally running the football, they're going to really do that through Ty's arm.
Yeah, you're probably right there. And I think, a lot of them, you got to credit South Carolina. I mean, and I talk about one-on-one blocks at the point of attack. Alabama didn't win many of those. And it impacted the production in the run game, the push at the point of attack. Now, I think we talked about this last week as well. Those 1-yard runs, the 2-yard run, the 4-yard run, and they're not consistent, but they do start to add up. And as long as you're avoiding the negative play, I think you give yourself a chance. But this clearly was not a team this past weekend that could just line up and dictate terms to South Carolina. So I think when you look forward and you look at the matchups that you say, okay, if you're looking at the SEC championship game, or you're looking beyond that to a college football playoff berth, who's the matchup against, right? Because I do think when you line up against some of these teams that are really good up front, that's where you become a little bit concerned about Alabama's traditional run game, particularly on early downs. But you're right with Jeremy Bernard and the ability to get the ball on the perimeter as an extension of the run game. Those add up as well, because what it does is it strains the defense. If you're constantly going side to side, right, now your tongues are dragging a little bit. That's where they can come back and they can get downhill on you and hopefully open up some lanes because you're so worried about the perimeter. And Alabama does do a good job of stressing the perimeter.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of what the Lions can do to you in the NFL, where they get you going side to side in the flats so much, and then they can bang one up the middle on you. Listen, I'm loving the depth that's being developed on this defense for Alabama. I mean, Nakai Hill-Green had a really good game coming in from Colorado. Pierre's been a monster the last few games, as Smith has. Xavier Mincy is getting playing time. Red Morgan's getting more playing time. This defense continues to improve. They gave up one big one to Nick Harbor, but that was his only catch of the day, 1 for 54, and it's a touchdown, and that guy is elite. This defense is getting deeper, more playmakers out there, and seems to be really in a good place right now.
Well, and the thing that I like about it is they seem to trust these players because they turn them loose all the time. Now, when you do that, and especially against a guy like Lenore Sellers, you are accepting the fact that you might give up a big one on the ground. You're accepting the fact that if you lose contain or you lose your gap integrity and that front door opens in front of the quarterback and he takes off and runs, and that happened on Saturday. And it's going to happen against those guys, Diego Pavia, Haynes King, Marcel Reed's another great example. But I love the fact that this defense doesn't think, they react. And I think one of the reasons why you're seeing some of that depth develop, and particularly with some of the younger guys, is when you're not overloading them with information, you're just saying, all right, guys, here's your key, here's your read, go. Now your guys play fast. It's hard to play fast when you're thinking. And that is a really true notion on the offensive side of the football. If you're constantly wondering and you're seeing too much and your head's spinning, how the heck are you supposed to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there? And I think there's a trust right now with Coach Womack and that side of the ball that we might give up one here. We might have a teaching moment here, and we might learn a little something about so-and-so. But those guys are also going to make their fair share of plays. And is there some risk in that? Yes. But it also tells you that I think this coaching staff knows exactly who they are on defense.
Smitty J. Hurts says, what happened to Kevin Riley? Why didn't he get the ball? He did go no touches this weekend. And
Daniel Hill, that's what happened.
Yeah. What now? Yeah,
that's a Daniel Hill. That's what happened.
Yeah, Daniel Hill. But as everyone is answering their own questions in the chat room, and that's what makes them the greatest audience in the world on Monday Morning Live. They're pointing out that Jim Miller's your best pass pro guy, and when you're facing a pass rush like that, you need Jam Miller in the game as much as possible, and he was in there. So that's Alabama in a nutshell. Bye week, and then LSU coming to town. We'll talk about the challenges of LSU with an interim coach coming up in just a second. Roback.com, promo code TNR20, Roback.com for all the great wear. Perfect for the holidays coming up. Make sure you use our promo code TNR20. Auburn gets a road win at Arkansas. They're now 4-4, 1-4 in the conference. They flip quarterbacks. Jackson Arnold gets benched after a pick six, and here comes Ashton Daniels, 6 of 8, 77 yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions. He ran it 7 times for 35. What about the quarterback switch at Auburn? What did you think of that card being played by Hugh Freeze in Fayetteville?
Well, I think that Jackson Arnold kind of forced his hand. You turn the football over. You're on the road. Every single game right now for Auburn is a must-have. And, he probably said, we went through the week. We worked both of them. They both got reps with the ones. We feel Jackson Arnold earned the right to continue to try and see if he can get the thing together. And then when it didn't happen, you want to try and get a spark. And I thought Ashton Daniels was sufficient, and I thought he managed things well, got some nice runs I thought was important. But the best thing that they had going for them was Auburn completely owned the line of scrimmage in the run game. I mean, that was a yeoman's effort and a big level of production from Auburn. And so that put them in advantageous situations. Now, the penalties were down. Third downs conversions are still a bit concerning. I get perplexed sometimes with their offensive skill personnel and how they haven't been able to maximize it. But I feel like we're a broken record, Jim, every weekend. I mean, that defense, holy smokes, man. And that quarterback at Arkansas is the real deal.
Right.
And they had his head spinning. They were changing the picture post snap. They were coming after him, and he did what a lot of quarterbacks will tend to do. He put the ball up for grabs, and he doesn't usually do that. So you're +3 in turnover margin, and you don't screw it up at quarterback, and it gives you a chance to win one on the road. And I know Arkansas is not very good, on the defensive side of the football, and they've had their fair share of challenges. But I thought it was still a gritty win by an Auburn team that, man, there might have been a team in college football that needed to win more than them.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And they get it 33-24. To your point on defense, though, Xavier Atkins, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for the loss. Falk and Woodyard had a good game, but yep. Rayshawn Pleasant's 2 interceptions, that one he took back for a touchdown. Man, he just suckered Taylor Green into that throw, didn't he?
Totally baited him into it. I mean, and he might have done it twice, if I recall correctly. And they did a really nice job of allowing Taylor Green to think something was not what it was going to be once the ball was snapped. And it was really impressive, and they've done it all year long. I mean, that is a group that is really, really hard to handle.
So how big is this game at home against Kentucky? Because you got Kentucky at home, at Vandy, Mercer, and then home to Alabama at the end of the year. That's how Auburn wins. So write the ending for me for Auburn.
Well, you're the better team versus Kentucky. They're going through their fair share of problems as well. A lot of speculation about Mark Stoops. Quarterback play has been spotty all year long. Took Texas to the wire 2 weeks ago, but that's a game you have to win. Obviously, the Mercer game's a game that you have to win. And then what's going to be interesting is to see the Vandy matchup, because Vandy wants to run the football and the quarterback's a dynamic athlete. Well, this is also a defense that's shown that they're ready to handle that. They let's not forget what Texas A&M has turned into on offense and how the Texas A&M Auburn game went because of the Auburn defense, right?
Right.
So to me, I think that game is obviously going to be an important one. And then in a rivalry matchup, Jim, I mean, the thing can go any way. They're not going to be the better team on the field. But I think that I could imagine seeing some of the same issues that were created by South Carolina's defense for Alabama could be created by Auburn's defense as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's Auburn's ending coming up. Into the chat room we go, roback.com. Nick says, I've just accept, Tom, that the refs just suck, period, in the SEC now. A lot of people are wanting you to answer the Alabama fumble, which led to a score which at that moment looked like it was going to cost Alabama the game on the punt. Mbakwe, it ends up hitting his left thigh, but it's obvious that the receiving team sort of pushing him in the back there. That's illegal, right? You can't. Yeah, that's a block in the back, right?
Yeah, it's a block in the back, and it's a block in the back into the returner.
Right.
If I'm recalling that correctly. And so, officiating, and it hasn't been good in the conference of this year in relationship to consistency, the use of replay. It's a hard job. We all get to see it in slow motion. We all get to see the review from 10 different angles, but the individual on the field is going to miss things. They're going to get it right. They're going to have glaring misses. I actually, to be honest with you, this is what I would like to see happen with officiating, Jim, is I would like to see that the coaches could have a challenge, all right? One challenge per game where they can challenge not only something that they thought was missed, but also something that they thought was called. So if they sat there and said, hey, listen, we think number 76 was holding.
Right.
And we're throwing our challenge flag. And it wasn't called during the play, but we think it was there. And now that play gets challenged, and the coach gets one per game. And if he doesn't get it, he loses a timeout.
Yeah, it's like the super challenge in the UFL, right?
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it could be pass interference. It could be anything.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
If you think it happened, and you got coaches upstairs, and they're looking at it, they're like, Coach, drop the flag. We got this one. And you literally, the coach goes up to the official and says, we think there's pass interference on number 17 here. We think there's defensive holding on number 42 here. And in critical moments like that, and I'm not saying that particular play would have been as black and white for that type of call, but it gives the coach the option to make a choice to potentially right or wrong, and could be really healthy for college football.
Yeah. It'll be fun to see what changes happen down the road. I mean, I never thought we'd have the kickoffs we have in the NFL, and that came straight from the spring leagues as well.
Yeah.
Let's get to the Brian Kelly firing and then the other games around the country. You're watching Monday Morning Live. He's ESPN and the ACC Network's Tom Luginbill. Jim Dunaway here from our Next Round studios. The next round comes up at the top of the hour, but you are watching and listening to us live for the 10th Monday in a row. This is Monday Morning Live. We do this every Monday during football season. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, and Brooks at some point today will send out some content from this show, some of our highlights. But Brian Kelly had very few highlights as the head coach at Texas A&M, and now he's out of work. And I don't know if this came as a surprise for you that it happened so quickly, but it did. If you were watching in prime time, it was a dismantling in the second half, and Brian Kelly looked lost. He had players like Garrett Nussmeier who was upset with him. He seemed to be on the wrong page with his assistant coaches, and he looked just lost in the second half. And finally, the athletic director, Scott Woodward, and him met on Sunday. And according to some reports, he asked for a change at offensive coordinator at play calling. And then Brian Kelly and he got into it a little bit, and the end was written. They're still negotiating the buyout, according to reports. But Brian Kelly out at LSU with a 34-14 record in 3.5 years, 2 10-win seasons, but not enough down at LSU. Give me your thoughts initially on hearing about Brian Kelly being out.
Well, again, I think you got to go back to the standard and the expectation of what this team was supposed to be capable of coming into this season, right? You've got a veteran quarterback. You've got veteran players on the perimeter. Now, you're a little bit young at running back, and you're having to replace a first-rounder at left tackle. You end up playing with a couple of freshmen on the right side of the offensive line, and Garrett Nussmeier has been injured. So none of the expectations on the offensive side have come to fruition with any level of consistency. And remember, Caden Durham and before Harlan Berry got involved, this was a team that could not run the football. So now everybody's pinning their ears back and coming after Garrett Nussmeier, and he's never looked the same in my mind from what we've seen each of the last 2 years. You also had a defensive football team that came into the season and up until 2 weeks ago looked like they finally were becoming what the expectation has been for a long time at LSU, and that's to be dominant up front, to be a lockdown type of secondary. And then all of a sudden for 2 weeks in a row, they can't stop anybody, and they can't stop the run on the ground. So they haven't, the expectation was so high, and I think for good reason. And then on Saturday night, you are at home in arguably one of the most difficult environments to play in all of college football. You do not turn the ball over. The other team turns it over twice. You get completely gashed in the kicking game. I think that was something that got glossed over, was the special teams component. And then how many moments did we see on the TV copy where they've got Brian Kelly mouthing, "What the F are we doing?"
Yes.
Right? And the more that starts to happen, the more it looks like you have no control, or you have you're lacking the leadership to, number one, correct it, and you're going all over the place and you're barking at everybody. It was a bad look. The optics of it were really, really bad. And I think you start to stack all of those things on top of one another. And these administrators, I know down in Louisiana, saying the governor's involved, the board of trustees, the AD, the expectation at a place like LSU, especially with the team they felt like they had coming back, not acceptable.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. First of all, Chazon says this is exactly Brian Kelly you had at Notre Dame. Maverick Hammerfist, though, says Nussmeier was never great, never. And the projections was for him to be great this year, him coming back. And I think it is a great a great lesson to those of us that cover the games, because LSU is my national championship pick.
Okay.
Is that
so see, you bought it too.
Yeah, I did. But I think it's a great lesson just because a quarterback is coming back or a lot of players are coming back, it does not necessarily mean they will be better than they were last year. And Nussmeier, we can talk injury, if he's got this, if he's got that, but inevitably he was not better than he was last year, and that offensive line was not better than it was last year. Their offensive line is a disaster. 7 sacks from Texas A&M and 11 tackles for loss in that game at home with your crowd. Crazy.
Well, and how are you playing with that many true freshmen? Where's your depth? Like, from an offensive lineman, you don't have, a redshirt freshman, a redshirt sophomore, a junior that's worked his way up this and that. And I asked that question kind of rhetorically because I'll tell you where it's at. It's somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what the portal's done. And nobody's immune, right? I mean, we've seen this now. There's some teams out there that have been able to withstand it and maintain some of their players and things of that nature. I think a lot of the teams that have chosen to utilize their revenue share and their transfer portal to invest in their own team are probably the ones that are seeing the benefit the most as opposed to allowing guys to go out the door and then just saying, okay, well, we'll go replace them. Well, clearly that's not happening. And it's happening across the board for a lot of teams in college football, particularly at that position. There's not enough of them. It's no different in recruiting than it is in the NFL draft. When there's a difference maker in the offensive line, is the guy always like a top 5, top 10 pick? Yeah, he usually is. Is he usually a top 5, top 10 ranked guy in high school? Yeah, but for every 2 of those, there's 10 wide receivers. And so up front, where it begins and ends, and at a place like LSU, who's got a history of being so dominant at the offensive and defensive front, to see them play the way that they're playing, it's just not acceptable.
A 9-time champion talking about his Auburn team. Everyone seems to be just waiting on Auburn to make a move on Hugh Freeze. He says making a move makes no sense to me at Auburn right now. With Florida, LSU, potentially Florida State, Ole Miss, if Lane takes a job, maybe Texas, Penn State being open, Auburn would get lost in that hunt for a new coach. Why not wait a year and maybe attack it next year? Your thoughts on when to pull the trigger, and can the job market be so cluttered that you don't want to get involved in it? Any school.
Absolutely, it can be that cluttered, because now what's going to happen, you have to ask yourself, if you're an Auburn fan or an administrator or a booster or a power broker, what have you, who's available that's going to be acceptable to win the press conference? Like, if you have all of those jobs open, are you going to be happy as an Auburn fan if the Auburn job is open and they go hire John Sumrall at Tulane, who's been a terrific football coach?
Hell yeah, on that guy. Yes, I would love that.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
yeah.
So there's one that's out there. Obviously, if that thing were to come open, clearly Lane Kiffin's name is gonna pop up. But the one thing I think that's frustrating Auburn fans is, of all of these buyouts that we've seen, theirs is the most reasonable.
That's right.
Right. So that's where I think their level of frustration comes, and I get it. But if you have an overcrowded market, and we don't know yet what's taken place with some jobs that haven't come open yet, that may very well, and let's not forget too, if you are somebody who's in the market for Lane Kiffin for a job opening, that team's going to the playoffs. So are you willing to wait that long? Now that we only have one transfer portal period, it's going to come up right after the playoff. Are you willing to miss a cycle? All right. So then that's going to have to come into the conversation. And if there are other coaches out there that could also potentially be in the playoff hunt, now are you willing to wait on that individual? So I get it. It's muddy. It's not black and white here with the Auburn situation. And what are you better off doing? I think, and I said this on here before, Auburn has improved their roster. Auburn's players are better than they were 3 years ago. They haven't been able to nail the quarterback position. And, you look at Kurt Signetti, he's nailed the quarterback position. You look at Ryan Day, they nailed the quarterback position. All right. And there's a lot to be said for that. And if you get that right, that seems to fix a lot of woes in other areas.
Back to the games on the field we go. Tom Luginbill with us, Rhoback.com, our title sponsor today. With the promo code TNR20, gets you great holiday gifts coming up. Rhoback.com, promo code TNR20. Still in Baton Rouge, though. Texas A&M with the beatdown, 49-25. I watched them in their entirety live and then on replay. I did the same against Notre Dame. I did the same against Auburn. Auburn game's an outlier right now. That team seems to have speed on top of speed on top of speed. The quarterback's fast. Concepcion is fast. Craver's fast. They're fast on defense with sacks and everything. Mike Elko looks like the slowest coach in the SEC, but he's got the fastest team. That team has speed on top of speed.
They got speed on top of speed. They've got depth. They've got trench play. My favorite pastime every Saturday night is become looking to see how many third downs they've given up on defense. It was 2 this past weekend. So they get off the field. The defense is generally on a long field. The kicking game's been spectacular. The quarterback, to me, and watching him the other night, has made such progress in the passing game. Like there were, and fortunately with the Sky Cam, sometimes gives you some really good angles. Like watching him like go through progressions and come down to a check down. Whereas a year ago, maybe prior to that, if he didn't like that first read, his eyes might have come down and he took off and ran. He would just rely on his athleticism. That's not happening anymore. Everything is 1, 2. It's happening quickly. Then he decides if he needs to do something with his feet. But he has really improved in the passing game. But again, a team that doesn't beat themselves, didn't turn the ball over on the road in Baton Rouge. I mean, that's unbelievable. The kicking game is outstanding. I keep going back to that because everybody wants to focus on offense and defense, and I get that. But like you talk about some of that speed and some of that ability, those guys are playing in the return game, and so they get their best players on the field in the most advantageous positions. Are from a schedule perspective, just looking at it from a schedule perspective. I mean, are they not the number 1 team in the country?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, a win at Notre Dame. Now, the SEC opponents right now don't look like they've played a ton. I mean, the schedule ends up working. I mean, they got 1 vote in the AP poll, so there's one other person out there that thinks they're number 1. I think right now I would take them in Ohio State,
Sure.
then Indiana, Alabama. That's the top 4, and that's where they are in a different order. That team's a playoff team for sure. And what they do when they get there, 8-0 for the first time since 1992. But that schedule, it looked like they'd done a lot. And now, Florida, not so good. At LSU, not so good. Notre Dame is a good win. That Auburn win was a tough win, but where are they? Mississippi State. I mean, the resume is not as good as I thought it was as I watched them play this game. But they scare me. They scare me as a great team.
Well, yeah, when you look at them, I mean, don't let your eyes deceive you, right? I mean, what they're doing, regardless of who the opponent is playing really high-level execution football, smart football with great players. And so we'll see how this thing unfolds. And now, we get into the month of November, and you start getting banged up a little bit. You're getting a little tired. You're getting a little fatigued. Where does your bye week fall? All of those sorts of things start playing a role.
Yeah. At Missouri coming up in a couple of weeks as they get a bye this week. Coming off of that emotional game, they get to rest a little bit, and then they go at Missouri, South Carolina, Samford, and at Texas to end the season. Ole Miss, I thought it was a mature win for Lane Kiffin and his team coming off the loss at Georgia to go to Norman and beat the Sooners 34-26. And we'll get to the quarterback. I just want to start with Kewan Lacey, 27 carries for 78 yards. 2 catches for 17, so 29 touches for Kewan Lacey. To me, that was a mature Lane Kiffin. Those are not wow numbers, 27 carries for 78 yards, but he kept pounding it into that Oklahoma defense, which kept them doing other good things offensively. That's a mature play calling for me.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the thing I think that stood out to me most about this, and some people don't think this is real. I think it's very real. For that team to go on the road against that opponent with all of the distractions about Lane Kiffin and the Florida job, and how do you address that with your kids? How do you deal with it? How do you get them to believe that you're not going anywhere? Like, you're going on the road in a huge rebound game against a team that's really good on defense. And at times they've shown that they're really good on offense. And it's hard to not have lapses. It's hard to not have maybe a bit of a lack of motivation. That team played their hearts out, man. And you're right. They just kept sticking with the run. And that's not an easy front, as evidenced by the numbers, to just line up and run the football and gash people. I think that quarterback, that little guy, man, I'm telling you, I don't quite understand Lane Kiffin's thinking in some of the red zone situations with Austin Simmons and why that move is being made. But I thought as a football team, I thought up front, Ole Miss was really, really impressive, created a lot of havoc. Talk about affecting the quarterback. They did that. Huge win, and they found a way to finish. They corrected what they could not do the week before in Athens.
Is Mateers slipping back to the pack as just an average quarterback? Do you think it's still the thumb issue? Because he's missing throws. He's not as dynamic running. Do you think it all goes back to the hand injury?
I don't know if it's that. I don't know if people have gotten a beat on him now through film study and through maybe what they're doing offensively. People having a better idea of how to defend it. But he is so erratic. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The throws that he misses are worse than the impressive ones he makes.
Yep.
And I think he's gotten a little bit gun shy from within the pocket and is starting to move a little bit more than he should or than he needs to. And I said this all year long, and they did happen to rush. They had one individual rush for over 100 yards, all right? But they still cannot consistently run the football at all. I mean, the entire year, and early on, the only guy that could run the football was John Mateer,
right.
And now he's not even having success in that regard. So they become fairly one-dimensional, which is allowed, in this instance, it was Ole Miss to be able to kind of tee off along the defensive front because they're not fearing that, Oklahoma's just going to be able to line up and run the football down their throat. And again, that kid did have a pretty decent day on the ground, but that hasn't been the norm. They're very frustrating on offense. I think they've got good players. They've got good skill on the perimeter, but John Mateer is way too streaky for them to be any type of consistent on offense.
Mateer and Arbuckle look like the book's out on them, to be honest with you. I agree with you. Missouri Vandy, you talked about trench battles. That was not the way the game I think everyone thought would play out when it's basically 0-0 for a lot of the game, and then 17-10 Vandy wins it. They're up to number 9 in the country, and they play at number 20 Texas this week. And it wasn't even a great Diego Pavia day. It just was a gutsy win from a lot of people that got Vandy the win. They now continue to be a college football playoff conversation team at number 9 in the country.
And they should be. And I think they should be because of how they're built. Their mode of operation, they're like the Georgia Tech of the SEC.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Tough, gritty, good up front on both sides of the ball. Quarterback can change the game. Not always pretty. Blue collar element to them. Find ways to move the football, move the chains, find ways to get off the field. I kind of like how they won this game because if you look at the remainder of their schedule, this is the type of game they might find themselves in.
Yeah.
Again. And so an important one in terms of how they won it. Jim, I think they're a playoff caliber team. Are they going to be able to pull off? Like, I look at them, I'm like, they could be a problem in the first round.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But can they get there?
Yeah. At Texas, Auburn at home, bye week, Kentucky at home, at Tennessee. Probably, you'll still be in the conversation with 2 losses, so you could drop one of those, maybe. But you can't drop 2 of them. Tough ending for Vandy. Texas survives Mississippi State. We'll talk more about Texas when they play Vandy next week. Arch, coming off the concussion, all that. I want to talk about Mississippi State because that one's a heartbreaker. And you know Levy's doing a heck of a job there just to have them in these games, and they just can't get the win. A 17-point deficit they blow in the fourth quarter there, and my heart hurts for Mississippi State people because they were ready to celebrate a win over that logo.
And you could hear it in the stadium when Texas returned to that punt.
Yes.
Like it just took the air out of the stadium. And when that happened, they never were able to regain that momentum. And this game in many instances is a game about emotion and momentum. And when Texas got that back, they never relinquished it. And you're right. I think actually Jeff Levy's put together a pretty highly competitive football team that has really improved from where they were a year ago. And they've been in a lot of football games, but they're in that phase right now where they got to learn how to win. And they need to get that one to light the fuse so they get it and understand it and see it. And right now that's not happening. They're not there yet. They're still, to me, in too much of a developmental phase.
We play an elimination game this week. Tennessee beat Kentucky, so now we get number 18 Oklahoma, number 14 Tennessee, losers out of the playoff race. Indiana's number 2 in the country. They demolished UCLA. And they've had 3 games. They've scored 50-plus this year. That's impressive. Fernando Mendoza, now your favorite for the Heisman. This Indiana team, listen, forget just making the playoffs. When they get to the playoffs, this is a tough out team here. They've been impressive. Ohio State hasn't played a ton of people. They've been impressive. Oregon's been impressive, I think, though they didn't score as many points as I thought against Wisconsin this past weekend. Indiana, can they make a case for winning the Big Ten when it's all said and done, when they get to the meaningless Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think they can. They're just so physical, man. Like, that's the thing. Like, they bully you around and bloody your nose. See the way they ran the football this past week. And then you got Mendoza coming off of it. Their play action game is lethal. They don't beat themselves. They're super disciplined. Kurt Signetti has that team so well prepared. There may not be a team in college football that carries a chip on their shoulder better than they do. And even though it looks like they're starting to win everybody over and you're like, okay, that team is kind of for real, they still act like they're not. Very difficult thing, I think, to accomplish. But, you go on the road 2 weeks ago, you go to Oregon and you not only win that game, but you get 6 sacks against Oregon on the road. I mean, holy smokes. And last year was not as good of a team as this year's is, which I think surprised a lot of people. But this year's quarterback is even better. So now you're every game you play it, you've got a chance. And because of where they are up front, I feel like we say this weeks upon weeks and months and years that we've been doing this. That's what separates the good from the great. That's it, right? Those position groups, and they got them.
I keep waiting for BYU and Cincinnati to fall apart. You got BYU and Cincy and Texas Tech. In the ACC, you got Georgia Tech. I keep waiting for Virginia to lose. They get away from North Carolina. Miami hangs in there when they beat Stanford. How many bids do you think the ACC and the Big 12 get? Does one of them at least get 2?
I think, I think the ACC could get 2. Now, SMU losing to Wake was a killer for them. I mean, that was one that nobody had on their bingo card. And so now, you start to tilt and look towards, the Big 12. Is Utah going to get Devon Dampier back? All right. What now happens with Texas Tech, that their starting quarterback, Baron Morton, is out, and their backup, who's played good football, just tore his ACL.
Right.
So he's out. All right. Now, does that thrust Cincinnati and BYU more into the equation? Because both of those teams can run the football and they're physical at the point of attack, which in that conference hasn't traditionally been the narrative of how Big 12 football is played. And again, we get down the stretch here, you have a wrong injury like you just saw with Texas Tech. And, I just mentioned with Utah, I would lean towards the ACC right now, but I don't feel confident in that. I think when Miami gave up a touchdown on the first drive last week to Stanford and then reeled off 42 straight points. And the way they're built, They look like a playoff team too.
Right.
But I don't know if there's anybody else, and maybe it's Louisville. I don't know if there's anybody else that plays the way Miami is capable of playing in the ACC. So we'll see.
Yeah, so Georgia Tech and Miami could be they're the two highest ranked, but 4 teams from the ACC in the top 16. So it's hard to imagine that they would be a one-bid league, but we play another weekend of football, and then next week we get the first peek at what the College Football Selection Committee thinks, Luke's.
Yeah, and listen, I think, you go back to the Georgia Tech one. They're still going to have Georgia at the end, right? Their schedule is very favorable. They got Georgia. All right, let's get into the ACC championship game. But if you've got that one loss and then you lose, you're the loser with 2 losses. You've had a great year. Does that still keep you in there? And I say that because we were just talking about Vandy. Vandy may not be an SEC championship game participant, but they can't afford to lose 3. And a team like Georgia Tech needs them to lose 3.
Yeah, I agree. The SEC starts elimination games this week, as I said, with Tennessee and Oklahoma, and we'll fight to the end, and we'll see if a 3-loss team can get there. But 2 is the magic number in the big conferences, and maybe even in the ACC if you're in that championship game. He's Tom Luginbill. Every Monday, I enjoy it so much. We kick back and just talk ball for about 45 minutes here. Thanks to Roback.com, promo code TNR20. Luke's, have a safe travel week, man, and we'll be in November when we talk again.
I can't believe it. All right, man. Have a great week, Jim. Say hello to the boys.
All right. The boys join me at the top of the hour. Next Round Live starts in about 15. We'll see you then.